A lot of people ask me, when does a startup need a fractional CMO? That's what we're going to dive into today. By the end of this video, you're going to know when a startup should be hiring a fractional CMO and when they might actually be jumping the gun. Hiring a fractional CMO too early or too late can dramatically disrupt your growth. That's why it's really important that you know exactly when to pull the trigger, and we're going to talk about those details now. As a business owner, it's really important to ask yourself, what stage are we in now? Because it's funny, a lot of different businesses will define themselves as a startup at many different revenue levels. And that's okay, but it can impact the timeline of when you should be thinking about hiring a fractional CMO. I like to break it down into revenue numbers because that seems to be the easiest thing for people to process inside of their head. And you might hear some of these numbers and think, that's not a startup, but the reality is lots of people still consider it one. So how I analyze when a startup should hire a fractional CMO based on revenue numbers really starts between $0 and $2 million. If you're doing $2 million a year, or up to $2 million a year, the majority of the time the founder or somebody inside the company or a very small vendor is currently handling the marketing. And your business isn't really large enough yet to justify the additional expense of a fractional CMO. So when businesses are under $2 million a year, I tell them that worst case scenario, hire a fractional CMO for 1 hour here or 1 hour there to solve some issues that are immediate, but I wouldn't recommend that at that revenue level you put somebody on a monthly retainer. Now, once you get above $2 million a year, there's a big difference. There's actually an old Japanese philosophy called the rule of 3 and 10, which they say that every time a business gets to the number 3 or the number 10, they have to completely reinvent themselves to go to the next number in the chain. So for example, if you're at $3 million a year in revenue in your business, it is a completely different concept, theory, strategy to get you to $10 million a year. That's where a fractional CMO can come in and be extremely valuable to your business when you're having to completely overhaul and tweak what you're doing to get to that next level. So I highly recommend that at that juncture, you bring in a fractional CMO because they're going to be able to do two things. They're going to be able to look at what you're currently doing in your strategy, what got you to that level. They're going to be able to pull some levers and optimize some things. And then they're going to be able to look at the next 30 days, 90 days, 6 months, and tell you very specifically what you need to add on to the business to be able to start that trek up the mountain from 3 to 10. Now, here's when it can really explode some growth. If you've started to get momentum and you've had some long periods of consistency, but you're starting to see an increase in your down pulse. So you've been on this ride and it's been up, up, little down, up, little down, up, little down, but then you've started to plateau and now the downs seem to be more consistent. That's a great time to hire a fractional CMO because whatever you did from an infrastructure standpoint to get those initial results was probably through really hard work and effort, but probably lacked a little bit of experience and knowledge and skill. And when you're in that stage, a fractional CMO can come in and they can look at what you're doing and say, ooh, you did these 8 things right, but these 2 things, they were absolutely wrong. We're gonna fix those 2, and all of a sudden you're gonna get back online with the trajectory that you had. That's a great time to hire a fractional CMO. Now, the opposite of that is when is a bad time to hire a fractional CMO is when you're just starting out, you have a product or a service, and you think everybody's gonna love it, and you say, let me go hire this person. That's the wrong time. You need to validate the desire of your product in the marketplace with as much grunt work and as little cost as possible before you start investing in other employees, because you can find out very quickly by just putting your product in front of 50 to 100 people whether anybody even wants to buy it and before you should even chase that dream. Okay, so assuming you believe that your business is at the right time to hire a fractional CMO, it's important for you to know that there's 3 types so you can decide which one you want. The first one is consultative. The second one is managerial, and the third one is execution-based. So consultative means you bring somebody in, they have a ton of experience in your industry, hopefully around your product, and they can say, okay, do this thing first, then this second, then this third, and we're gonna see a bump immediately in our revenue. And they're gonna give you about 2 to 4 hours of FaceTime a month, maybe some email support, maybe some text support, and it's your job to then go and implement it. So as long as you have the team and the time to be able to execute their advice, then consultative is perfect. Then you've got managerial. This is where they step in at a more senior role and they actually take over your marketing team and they tell your marketing team exactly what they want them to do. And then obviously it's up to the fractional CMO to create the culture, make sure that communication is smooth, make sure everybody's following timelines, make sure everybody's on the same page. Obviously that's a little bit more expensive because you're asking them to put more hours in a month. That might be 10, 15, 20 hours a month. The third one is where they're in charge of the execution completely without your team. And that means they typically work as a senior executive in an advertising agency or they own an advertising agency like I do. And that's where the fractional executive will come in and say, let me analyze everything, let me audit everything. Okay, here's the 5 things we need to do immediately to increase revenue. And then here's our 30-day, 90-day, 180-day plan. And our internal team, the agency's internal team, is going to execute it for you. Here's why that's my favorite. That team has already been trained in the processes of the fractional CMO. They know exactly what to do, how to do it, when to do it, the quality that's required, and the expectations that are set. And that can often reduce the time to execution by 70 to 80% because this is nothing new, it's nothing foreign, where managing someone else's team, there's a lot of people that need to get in sync together and it can take a considerably longer amount of time. If you actually want to see how this works with a real startup business, I've put together another video for you. It's going to show you the 5 things that you must know before hiring a fractional CMO. There should be a link below. Go ahead and click it, and I hope you enjoy it.